2004, he wrote Stealing Elections, How Voter Fraud Threatens Our Democracy. And in 2012, he co-wrote Who's Counting, How Fraudsters and Bureaucrats Put Your Vote at Risk. Please welcome back to the program, John Fund. John, how are you?
Exhausted, but, for 20 years I've been warning about this happening, Larry, that the erosion of the rule of law and the safeguards against election integrity would eventually come back to bite us. And the first warning signal was Florida, Bush v. Gore, and 20 years later, it's now in 5 or 6 states. The contagion is spreading.
John, did you anticipate an election this close this year?
Yes, I did. Mm-hmm. And you can look it up at National Review. The danger here, Larry, is this. You're going to get a lot of callers who say, I heard about this anecdote, I heard about this voter fraud, but it's almost impossible to prove that after the fact. What we do have, though, is a pattern of legalized theft, where both in Nevada and in California with ballot harvesting, and in Pennsylvania especially, where the Supreme Court ruled that regardless of what state law says, you can count ballots that are received in Pennsylvania up until this Friday at 5 o'clock. And they don't require a valid postmark, and they don't require signature verification. That's an open and great invitation to legal fraud. So the old stories I have to shared with you many times before were about people trying to steal votes outside the legal system. Now, because of COVID, the left has decided to use this as the excuse to change the laws and try to legalize procedures that make fraud easy.
I'm speaking with John Fund, author of the books How Voter Fraud Threatens Our Democracy and Who's Counting, How Fraudsters and Bureaucrats Put Your Vote at Risk. So, John, you're telling us that the president may uncover a lot of, call them irregularities, call them inconsistencies, but most of these things are perfectly legal if immoral.
No. They can't be proven in court in time for the Electoral College to meet. Mm-hmm. The danger that we have is we've had courts and legislatures basically change the law to make it easier to cheat, but the Supreme Court has already ruled that, for example, Wisconsin couldn't do that. The U.S. Supreme Court has stepped in a couple of times. But what ultimately this is going to come down to is ignore a lot of the anecdotal evidence that's not provable in court in a short period of time. Mm-hmm. What is provable in court is what Pennsylvania Supreme Court tried to do, which is to say, we're going to ignore the deadline for absentee ballots to arrive. We're going to ignore the rule that says they have to have a postmark, and we're going to ignore the rule that the signatures have to match. That can go before the Supreme Court. 4 out of 8 justices said that was invalid 2 weeks ago. That was before Amy Coney Barrett joined the court. So if Pennsylvania is close enough, I think you may see the Supreme Court revisit this issue.
And if Pennsylvania is close enough, you think that the Supreme Court could revisit the issue? And assuming Joe Biden now gets the lead, as many of the experts are speculating, because a lot of the votes are coming in from areas near Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania, you think there is a chance that the Supreme Court could step in and that result could be overturned?
I think there's a small chance, maybe 20%. But the point is, regardless of what happens, we have to raise this issue now, because what we've seen is the hijacking of our election systems using COVID as an excuse. We were told months ago, you can't vote in the polls. We have to have all the votes have to suddenly shift to mail-in election. We have to change all of our procedures. Well, Larry, dozens of millions of people voted at the polls. There were no major problems. And in fact, at the end, the Democrats, did you notice how they changed their tune? They used to say you have to mail it in, and suddenly it was you have to show up at the polls. Mm-hmm. The bottom line is this was all a power grab to try to change the laws and get rid of the safeguards that we have against voter fraud and irregularities using mail-in ballots, which is a presidential commission co-chaired by Jimmy Carter said several years ago are the easiest way to cheat in an election.
John Fund is my guest, again, co-author of the book, Who's Counting, How Fraudsters and Bureaucrats Put Your Vote at Risk. Based on what you've heard right now, based on the states that the president is apparently filing a lawsuit against, Michigan, Pennsylvania, what do you think the chances are that the courts will step in and will reverse these results?
Some courts might, some courts won't. The problem is the president is behind in all of these states. It's always better to be ahead, not behind. I would say the odds of the president prevailing in the end are maybe 20, 25%. But the battle is worth fighting because you cannot allow a rule of law to be overturned and the lawyers and the courts deciding how the people voted rather than the people themselves voted. So even though, regardless of what the outcome of it is, this legal battle is important because we need to preserve the integrity of the election, and we need to have a big debate after this election on how this whole process of mail-in voting was hijacked by the left.
John, I've noticed that the same people criticizing the president for not imposing a federal mandate to deal with the coronavirus are perfectly okay having 50 different state legislatures determine their voting procedures.
Well, I support our decentralized voting system, but ultimately there are standards that apply if you have a federal election like president, and the Supreme Court, I think, may well address this issue. They did with Bush v. Gore. They said in Florida in 2000, Larry, that you can't have different counties using different standards in a recount, and because that's against equal protection law.
Right.
So the same thing here. You cannot have states step beyond a certain point and say, we're just going to let anyone vote, and we don't even have any safeguards against it, and we don't even care. There is a point where the federal courts do intervene in our decentralized 50-state election system.
John Fund, I support our federalism system, too. I'm just wondering why the same people who are protecting federalism in this case were demanding that the president impose national standards to deal with the coronavirus. I would have thought that the same federalists would recognize that dealing with the coronavirus is also a state-by-state deal.
Larry, the sage of South Central began his career on liberal hypocrisy. You know what the answer is. You don't even have to ask it.
The books are called How Voter Fraud Threatens Our Democracy, up on LarryElder.com. Also the one he co-wrote in 2012, Who's Counting? How Fraudsters and Bureaucrats Put Your Vote at Risk. John Fund, thank you very much for taking the time. We appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thank you, Larry.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. Later on, we're going to be speaking with John Eastman about the merits of the legal challenges the president is filing against Michigan, against Pennsylvania, and as you know, he is demanding and getting a recount apparently in the state of Wisconsin. So this thing is not yet over. 888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. More fallback from Joy Reid referring to Justice Clarence Thomas as Uncle Clarence. Rachel Maddow said nothing. I'm Larry Elder.